Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? I was just checking on the Colorado Proposition HH results, and so far it's failing despite all the extremely deceptive, oh, you can't trust the government. I mean, you already knew that, but like it's just even grosser than the normal grossness of the government. All right, yeah, drink of wine here. We're back to doing some Matt Walsh content, but let me do the YouTube stuff. First of all, if you are not subscribed to this channel, I would really appreciate a subscribe, even if it's a hate subscribe, because all the Matt Walsh stans come to these videos and freak out. But that's okay. We love you anyway. You can also follow me on X Twitter. I am Karen Ann Harlos over there. And last but not least, if you appreciate this type of content, I would really appreciate your support at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. So I am like right on it today because this is the Matt Walsh show that came out earlier today. And normally it takes me a couple months to get to do something. And I can tell you, when I first watched the show, I wanted to do some commentary on it because I already thought it was a bit ridiculous. But when I dove into it some more and actually checked his sources and actually watched a video that he played on his show and saw how he selectively edited it, shame on you, Matt. I was like, I definitely have to do this. Now, like most things, he's not entirely wrong. But if you're going to complain about leftist spin on things, you probably shouldn't put an ultra-conservative spin on it because, sauces for gooses and ganders does come into play. So Matt is not entirely wrong, but it's quite the spin, and as I said, some selective outrage and some selective editing. So what was the topic? The topic is the way the media is going after the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And he's right. They are going after him. They're going after him really unfairly, and we will deal with a lot of that. Let me just tell you right off the bat, I don't pay attention to Republican inside baseball. I didn't even know who this guy was. I don't carry a torch for him. I don't really give a crap. I thought it was interesting the way a dark horse candidate became speaker, and that's about the extent of my interest. So I have no particular interest in defending or not defending the guy. So I'm kind of coming at this somewhat as a blank slate, but I've seen the media. They are really, really going after this guy in just the completely inflammatory way that the mostly leftist media does. And of course, since I'm criticizing Matt here, obviously I go after the right as well. But the mainstream media, they're just a bunch of leftist chowderheads. I mean, let's be honest here. And we'll get into that, but then we'll get into how Matt made it worse than it really is and refused to concede when they actually did have a point. Because just like Matt, the leftist media is not entirely wrong either. You see, both sides of this equation have a point. Go figure that you can actually do that without having to commit ritual self-cancellation by saying that someone you don't agree with might in fact have a point, but giving Matt serious demerits for the selective editing he did, because how can you trust, this alternative media on YouTube? If you happen to be of a more conservative bent, you want to be able to watch these shows and trust them. But when you see the editing he did, or his producers did, I hope that some of that trust goes down a few pegs. All right, so the controversy, which Matt will explain, but I just want to lead up to it, is a Rolling Stone article about a practice that Mike Johnson has for accountability. Those of you who weren't raised evangelical or convert later, that you weren't involved in evangelicalism or fundamentalist Christianity at all, this is all going to sound really weird to you. That's my background. I do think it's a bit weird myself, but I'm accustomed to it because I went to a Calvary chapel, and anyone who went to a Calvary chapel, none of this is going to sound foreign to them, like it might to somebody who wasn't raised as an evangelical. So Mike Johnson has accountability software installed on his devices to make sure that he's not a bad little boy who's watching prawn. This is not unusual in evangelical circles. I even knew the software that he's going to mention. So this is what this is about. If you've ever listened to Promise Keepers or gone to men's Bible studies in like the evangelical Calvary Chapel-esque type movement, none of this is going to sound completely foreign to you. But Mike takes it a bit too far, kind of the way Mike Pence took it a bit too far, where he would never even, as an adult responsible man, be alone in a room with a woman. Like, he took it too far. But I'll tell you, that wasn't unusual in the Calvary Chapel circles that I ran with. There was a weekend, like a retreat weekend, that I had sponsored some people to go to, and at times it was a couple, but they'd go on separate weekends, men and women's weekends. In that circle I ran with, if if the male part of that couple needed a ride, I couldn't pick them up and take them because you could not be alone with a man. This is just the way it is. It's bizarre, but it's not foreign to those of you from that background. I'd love to see you in chat. If all of this you're going, oh yeah, I remember this. But let's get started now that I set it up. And we've got like 8 clips or so, but along with the full version of the edited clip that Matt is going to play.
So the latest crime committed by the new Speaker of the House, according to the media and the gaggle of brain-dead leftist zombies on Twitter, is that, get this, he tried to prevent his children from looking at pornography. And in the minds of these porn-crazed hyenas, this is a big problem. This is an outrage.
Already he's not being fair. Just think about it. Just listen to what he said and use your noodle. Even knowing the way the media is, does that even sound like a possibly fair interpretation? Yes, they did think it was weird because evangelical culture is weird, but they didn't think it was weird for the reasons he said. They didn't think it was weird because a father doesn't want his son to be looking at X-rated material. That never came up that was weird. The concern of the father for the son. Never did it come up like, well, doesn't everyone from infants on up just watch this stuff? It wasn't like that at all. It was the way he went about it that was the issue. So Matt starts out just as bad as the leftists do, with his complete mischaracterization, as if they were salivating over the idea of everyone watching X-rated material. Okay, next clip.
Mike Johnson admits he and his son monitor each other's porn intake in resurfaced video. Now, this framing has, of course, been immediately adopted by other media outlets and hundreds of leftists on social media. Many articles and posts have repeated it or a version of it. The left insists that this supposed revelation is creepy and weird and gross. They've called Johnson a predator and so on. And of course, if this headline was literally true, if Rolling Stone was not a worthless propaganda rag, then we'd have to agree. You note the carefully selected phrase, porn intake, which suggests that Mike Johnson is actively consuming porn and sharing the material with his son.
Okay. First of all, maybe you guys can find it. He didn't give a source. I couldn't find one article that repeated that Rolling Stone article that called him predatory. Not one. Are you making that up, Matt? They certainly did call him creepy, and I think it's a bit creepy. And I'm no conservative or prude, but I couldn't find one that called him predatory. I did see articles that mentioned that Rolling Stone article that used the word predatory, but it wasn't in reference to Mike Johnson. It was in reference to a quote from someone, I believe from the Family Research Council, that was talking about internet predators and how watching X-rated material opens up minors to internet predators, not calling the speaker a predator. So I think Matt's making this up. I'd love to see an article that called him a predator, but even if you find one, it certainly isn't what most of the articles were saying, because I went through multiple pages of Google results and could not find that. But let's take a look at this Rolling Stone article, because I do think he has a point that the framing is bizarre. But it's funny he didn't pick up on what I think's actually the worst part of the framing. But here's the article. So he was right. The title says Mike Johnson admits. And it's the admits that really bothers me. And Matt never talks about that. As if it's something like you should hide, that you admitted. Like, yeah, I hate to admit it. But no, when you see the video clip in this resurfaced video, you'll see it's not something he admitted. It was something he was talking about to a church group. But yeah, that title is susceptible of many interpretations. But if you read the article, they actually characterized what he did. Okay, maybe that's not the right. They characterized it accurately. Let's not say fairly, because they put their own really gross presuppositions, not about the practice, but about Mike Johnson as a person. So let's go through this a bit, and I'm going to need to put this on my other screen so I can read it a little better. But you can also go read it yourself. So we're going to read this. During a conversation on the war on technology at a church, there was a video unearthed. I doubt it was being hidden on by anyone. And it said he installed this program called Covenant Eyes, which I am super familiar with, hearing about it from my evangelical days, which is accountability software. And what that means is you have accountability partners. So this software scans your devices, and if you are looking at what it thinks through its various filters to be X-rated material, it rats you out to your accountability partner. Your accountability partner immediately gets an alert on their phone saying, you've been a naughty, naughty boy. So, bizarre, but not unusual in evangelical circles. Here's where it gets bizarre, and Matt will never admit this is bizarre. Speaker Johnson says, it sends a report to your accountability partner. My accountability partner right now is Jack, my son. I am sorry, that is creepy and weird. When you are an adult, you do not have your accountability partner be your minor son. This is supposed to be another man. Someone who's your peer, not someone you're a parent to. And then he says, he also monitors his sons, and that's perfectly fine. The parent monitoring his son. But for it to be reciprocal, puts them like on an equal footing, that is just strange. And you don't want to be thinking about your dad watching X-rated material. This is creepy. The whole idea of accountability isn't. The whole idea that he is being watchful over his son isn't. But the fact that he's having his son monitor him is weird. And the fact that Matt can't see that is interesting. And the fact that he doesn't really explain that that is the problem that the media has. And they have a point. Okay, so let's take that off the screen. Now that you've got the backdrop here. But any other Christians in the house, you've heard of Covenant Eyes. You've heard of Covenant Eyes. So let's continue here. We're going to do some screenshots from Covenant Eyes.
Porn intake means that Johnson is a porn viewer, and his porn viewing is being monitored by one of his kids. In fact, the website Political Wire makes this claim explicitly. Here's the headline. Mike Johnson admits his son monitors his porn viewing.
Okay, let's go look at that Political Wire article. Again, the headline is kind of, it's sus. The headline is sus, but you can charitably read that as, because if you read the actual articles, nowhere in there does Mike Johnson say that he's actually watching it. It seems like the point is he's trying to encourage his son by saying, I'm going to hold myself to the same standards. But you need to be a parent. But here's the Political Wire headline. So he represented it properly. And I think the Rolling Stone headline was a bit better. This one does lean towards you thinking that he is watching X-rated material with his son. I mean, that's the way it's making it seem. In this title, Matt has a point. The title stinks, but if you read the article, it does correctly represent. But we know some people just scan the title. So, okay, fair enough point. It's kind of the game of telephone. Rolling Stone said it one way, and then other news organizations picked it up a different way. But one thing more to say about the Rolling Stone article. Let's see if we could put this up here again, because they are just so grossly biased. So I'm trying to find where they describe. Yes, it is. Let me see if I can find the page here so you guys could see it. Yeah, right there. So it says that he's a faith-obsessed. Faith-obsessed. Interesting terminology. It's kind of like a pregnant person. There used to be a word for somebody who was faith-obsessed, devout. If this was a leftist, like some very affirming liberal theology, activist, religious person, do you think they'd call them faith-obsessed, or do you think they would call them religious or devout? Such loaded terminology. Election denying, and we all know what crap that is because Democrats do that constantly. That's just dumbass terminology to make somebody wrong by definition, and it's just like, yeah, I will say the Rolling Stone is journalist denying. Far-right Christian nationalist. Now, Mike Johnson's not far-right, and he's also, as far as I can tell, not a Christian nationalist. He's a Christian, and he's a nationalist, but that doesn't make someone a Christian nationalist. I know that might sound weird, but those two terms together mean more than the sum of their parts. And it's like, you know, a butterfly isn't a stick of butter that flies. The two words together have a different meaning, and a Christian nationalism is a pretty specific thing. And from anything I've seen, he's a nationalist who is a Christian, which isn't exactly the same thing. So anyway, yeah, the Rolling Stone article is crap. I mean, but it did correctly represent his accountability software and said it's creepy and Big Brotherish. Now, I don't agree necessarily it's Big Brotherish, because parents are supposed to be looking out for their children. I think 17's probably a bit too old to be doing this. Like, he needs to be getting prepared for adulthood, but whatever. He's still a minor. It's creepy for him to be monitoring his dad. That's the creepy part. Even if he was a 25-year-old son, you're still a parent. You don't have your children as your accountability partners. That's not the role you have. That is just so, the ick factor on that is super, super high. Okay, next clip I think is this one.
Now this implies, doesn't really imply, but outright claims that Mike Johnson is actively watching porn, and the porn is being shared with his son. If that was really the case, then yes, it would be extremely disgusting. But it is not the case at all. It is a slanderous lie by people who are determined to make normal, responsible parenting into something bizarre and even abusive.
Okay. If you read the article, it does not give the impression that they are swapping X-rated material like you would baseball trading cards. It does leave open exactly what this report contains, and hearing Matt, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. That they're not sharing X-rated material. And here's the thing. It's not quite so cut and dry. No, Mike Johnson is not purposely sharing X-rated material with his son. But let's go to the next clip because I think this is the one that's a bit selectively edited. So Matt's like, why don't we watch this resurfaced video where Mike Johnson is talking about what was actually going on? And let's see if this is it. I believe it is.
But we get a report and it says, hey, no activity of concern, and it's really sensitive. It'll pick up almost anything. It looks for keywords, search terms, and also images, and it will send your accountability partner a blurred picture of the image. And so on occasion I get one. I was just looking at the one from this week. I got on Jack, and it said, this is the.
Here we go.
Okay, so what's the actual story here? The story is that...
Nope, that's not it. Hold on. I have it here. Why didn't it come up? But let me pick it up. This is the clip. I'm going to start a new screen here. So this is the clip that Matt played.
Covenant Eyes is the software that we've been using a long time in our household. I first learned about it at, I think, a Promise Keepers event in the early 2000s. I think it was developed in about the year 2000. But it's the largest accountability software that there is, and there's some paperwork out there on the table that I think everybody may have picked up on the way in. If not, go get it. It's a subscription-based. I mean, we don't make any money on this. I'm telling you, we use it. Okay, I'm endorsing it because I'm a user. It's about $15 a month, $16 a month, something like that. And you get up to 10 devices. And what it is, it's accountability software. So men in a church, men's Bible study groups will do it. That's how it's presented at Promise Keepers. But they also mention, hey, when your kids become teenagers, especially if you have boys, dads, they're talking to the guys at this event, you might want to think about doing this with your sons. And so we've been doing that. And so what it does real simply is it has an algorithm and software. It's way above my head how it works, but it scans, you obviously opt into it, but it scans all the activity on your phone or your devices, your laptop, tablet, what have you. We do all of it. And then it sends a report to your accountability partner. So my accountability partner right now is Jack, my son, right? And so he's 17. So he and I get a report of all the things that are on our phones or all of our devices once a week. If anything objectionable comes up, your accountability partner gets an immediate notice. I'm proud to tell you my son he's got a clean slate, all right?
Yeah. Okay, that's where Matt cut off the clip with him saying, my son's good. It's weird that he just said his son is good and he didn't say we both are. But anyway, when you're speaking, sometimes you forget to say something. I do that all the time. So that was the clip Matt played to show that nothing creepy at all. I actually think that clip is a bit creepy too. And I don't think, now, I wasn't at that Promise Keepers, but I don't think when they said at Promise did I say Promise Peepers? That's funny. Promise Keepers, when they say, oh, maybe you should do this with your sons, I don't think they meant make your son your accountability partner. I think parents, maybe you want to monitor what your children are doing. Anyway, that's the way he took it. But notice where it stopped. And I'm proud to report my son is clean. But the clip doesn't end there. Matt edited it there. Here's the rest of the clip, and then you'll maybe understand why the media is getting a lot more weirded out by this and perhaps insinuating that they're sharing X-rated material because of the rest of the clip, which Matt conveniently left out.
But we get a report and it says, hey, no activity of concern, and it's really sensitive. It'll pick up almost anything. It looks for keywords, search terms, and also images, and it will send your accountability partner a blurred picture of the image. And so on occasion I get one. I was just looking at the one from this week. I got on Jack, and it said, this is the only one that may be questionable, and it's this blurred image of two women talking in a live screen thing, and I zoom in and I have to unblur it, and it's two middle-aged teachers.
Okay. Now, if he never has anything questionable, then his son doesn't get a report. But let's say he had a moment of weakness and did look at some X-rated material. According to him, his son would get a blurred image of it and could unblur it and view it. That is why people are saying that potentially, now they didn't add the potentially, But it's not that big of a stretch here to say if there was something questionable that he looked at, his son would get to see at least an image of it. Why didn't Matt include this portion of it? It is immediately after the part he clipped out. Matt, I'm your accountability partner here, Matt. Are you representing things fairly even to the left? And yeah, they were crappy to Mike Johnson in the way they're spinning part of this, but you're not being fair either. Now, this is what Matt said immediately after the selectively edited clip he played.
Okay, so what's the actual story here? The story is that Mike Johnson monitors his child's internet usage to make sure that his child is not accessing harmful and objectionable material. And the app he's using, Covenant Eyes, also gives his son access to the content Johnson is viewing on his own phone. Now, anyone who is not an insane idiot immediately understands the point of this latter step. You have to be a perverted freak yourself to see it as something perverse. Johnson is obviously trying to model good behavior for his son. He's not having his son monitor his porn intake because there is no porn intake. The whole point is that Johnson doesn't look at porn, and he wants his teenage son to know that he doesn't look at it because he's trying to be a good role model.
Your son should not be your accountability partner in looking at dirty material. That is what's creepy, and you didn't mention on how if for some reason, let's say his phone even, I know some people are going to go, yeah, sure, Jan, I've accidentally stumbled across things I would rather I don't see. But if I had Covenant Eyes on my phone, it would alert my accountability partner and they get to see that image. And actually nowhere in any of these discussions did it ever say that Mike never messed up. Now, you can assume he would, particularly since he knows his son would be watching. But that's kind of weird too. Like, would you maybe do it if it was your best friend and you can explain it? I don't know. That's a weird situation. I understand the intent is to model good behavior. I'm not reading bad intent into this. I am saying that to your normal people, this seems weird. It also seems, let me give you something else that generally is innocent in evangelical circles, but is weird. Promise rings that a girl makes to her father and purity balls that fathers take daughters to. I'm sorry, that is weird and creepy. Do I think those fathers are messing with their daughters or have some kind of weird thing? No. But to the outside world, when you're outside of the evangelical bubble, it is weird. And Grant, you obviously were not listening to the whole show because I said multiple times that I never thought he watched it. So continue on with your assumptions. It's so funny the way people cannot listen. And that's somebody in chat, by the way. So let me put it this way. You're assuming, Grant, that he didn't. I don't know one way or another. I just know that whether or not he did or did not, even if it was something that he accidentally stumbled upon, which can happen very easily, his son got an image of it. And that is just bizarre to have your son as your accountability partner. And for anyone to say, oh, it's so weird to think he might be watching X-rated material. Do I think he was? No, I don't. Back to here. So let's take a look. Here's Covenant Eyes description. We're here to help you succeed. Overcome porn. It's not that unreasonable to think if this is software for people who have a problem. Do I think he has a problem? No. I think he heard about this at a Promise Keepers and thought it sounded like, hey, I'm concerned about my son. I hear all the young people are looking at this kind of stuff. Whatever. But to normie reporters, when I mean normie in this case, it's like non-evangelical reporters, and they're looking at what Covenant Eyes describes itself as, it is not unreasonable. They are not pulling this entirely out of their rear end. Let me take that off here. And there's a couple more clips, but something I wanted to show you guys. When I said that I couldn't find anything where he was called a predator, which I haven't, this is about the worst piece I saw. And it's describing a bit by Jimmy Kimmel, but it's a late night host. I mean, it's always going to be over the top. And here in the title, they call it Creepy Father-Son Prawn Habits. Yeah, do I think that's a fair headline? No, but this is the worst one. And I do think there is a creepy factor there, half of it, not the whole thing. And I think here's another headline. And this one has a lot of like clickbaity. U.S. Speaker battling porn addiction? Okay, that's a very unfair, loaded headline. But the software in its description, remember, says it will help you battle your porn, overcome your porn addiction. So you kind of open yourself up to it with that. So let's take all of this. So there's some very unfair headlines. I don't think the media is treating Mike Johnson fairly, but I also don't think Matt is really coming to terms that there is something a little bit off here. It was certainly a lapse of judgment to make your minor son your accountability partner. And I do think the analogies to the purity balls are spot on. But there was a couple other objections, and Matt refuses to acknowledge that there's any credibility to these concerns at all. And I think Matt's points of let's play the clips and I'll show you, and I'll tell you where I think Matt had good points, but also where if this was a leftist in the House of Representatives that had some kind of monitoring software on their phone, we would be asking the same question. So it's not an unreasonable question, and Matt's answer is also not unreasonable.
The left has looked for other reasons to object to Johnson's responsible parenting as well. The Rolling Stone throws another line of attack against the wall. Quote, outside of the creepy big brotherness of it all, Receipt Maven also aired concerns about whether Covenant Eyes, which is still a working subscription-based service, might compromise Johnson's devices if he's still actively seeking accountability. Quote, a U.S. congressman is allowing a third-party tech company to scan all of his electronic devices daily and then uploading reports to his son about what he's watching or not watching, Receipt Maven wrote. I mean, who else is accessing that data?
I don't think that's a completely illegitimate question to raise. If you have access to confidential information and you've got monitoring software to... If this was Hillary Clinton, would we be raising questions? Of course we would. But Matt's response to that is perfectly reasonable as well. Do we really think that he's installing this on his government devices? Of course, that then kind of defeats the whole purpose of accountability when you could go to other devices and his 17-year-old son would be able to figure that out as well. The whole thing where he's trying to set a good example. When you're an adult, do you don't think your son would know you could just get another phone that he doesn't know about if you really had some burning X-rated material addiction? So yes, this is a legitimate question. But yeah, no, I don't think anyone really thinks he's installing this on his, government-issued devices. But it's nothing wrong with asking the question. We would certainly be asking that question. And I'm going to answer Grant again. Grant, it is hard to believe that you keep insisting that I said it's hard to believe he doesn't watch X-rated material. I never said that. In fact, I said the opposite. Talk about... I want to put this on the screen here. Because anyone who's watched the show knows that I said nothing of the sort. Check this out. Let's move this down. Nope, wrong comment. This one. Remove. Oh, it won't put it up. It will not put it up. Well, it just says, is it that hard to believe that he doesn't watch X-rated material? Some people don't. I never doubted that he didn't. I don't know what show you're watching. It seems like you're pulling a Matt, where you just want to have a knee-jerk reaction. But yeah, that's okay, because I don't agree with Matt. Therefore, I must be saying something that's a caricature of what you've just assumed a critic would say, rather than a fair-minded assessment that there is something a little strange going on here that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not he watches X-rated material, but whether or not this is the right way to handle this sort of thing, to make your son your accountability partner. If you don't think that's weird, okay, it's weird. 99 out of 100 people would think that's weird.
But obviously, this is not really a matter of misinterpretation. We know the real reason why the left is going after Johnson for this. And this is the real point. This is the most important point.
Oh, so we know the real reason. It seems to me we hear that a lot from the leftists about conservatives, that we know the real reason because they're racist or they're this or they're that. So it's not okay when the left does that to you guys, Matt, but it's certainly fine for you here now to say that you know the real reason. Interesting. Hypocrisy much?
That these are weak, frail, porn-obsessed automatons who lack willpower and self-control, and they feel shamed.
Oh, so sorry. I always do that because I don't want the echo. All right. I don't even remember where I started. So, we'll just start over. So, he said that this is weak, that they're weak-minded, these leftists. Well, some people would say that needing an accountability partner is weak-minded. Now, I'm not suggesting that Speaker Johnson has any kind of addiction problem that he needs an accountability partner. I do believe he was just trying to, in a weird, very not good, doesn't look right, tone-deaf way, was trying to set a good example. However, there are men out there that struggle with addictions to X-rated material, that find this kind of monitoring software with their men's Bible study and things like that helpful. If you need that to overcome it, are you weak? Well, according to Matt's logic here, you must be. But he doesn't apply the same standards. He's doing exactly what the left does, and he's not being fair.
They feel rebuked whenever they encounter someone who doesn't look at porn, someone whose life isn't dominated by it like theirs is.
Who's to say that any of those commenters' life was dominated by X-rated material? I want to tell you an analogous story here. A lot of people think because libertarians are in favor of legalizing all drugs, prostitution, all victimless crimes, that we must be the biggest degens in the world. So when I first became a libertarian, I had that impression up to a point, and I was not, well, crap, I wasn't even an anarchist yet, so that happened in July of 2015. So this was around April, May of 2015. Lily Tang Williams, who some of you may know, had some extra tickets to the Libertarian Expo in Las Vegas. It was LPEX. And she already had a room bought and was like, get plane tickets and I'll give you a ticket to the conference and you can stay with me. And I jumped at the chance. I was a brand new libertarian. But here I am thinking, oh my goodness, it's this libertarian like convention. It wasn't a party convention, but it was just a libertarian movement convention. Had never been to any big gathering of libertarians, and it was in Las Vegas. And I am just picturing like complete debauchery. You know, I had that impression. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to this group of libertarians in Vegas. This is going to be crazy. I have never been amongst a bigger group of squares in my entire life. Lily and I, the most degen thing she did was play the slots. We are sitting to the next in the slots, and I kid you not, the barmaid comes by, and what does Lily do? She orders a glass of milk in a casino. She orders a glass of milk. I think I have PTSD over that still. This is 8 years ago, and I will never forget that glass of milk. And then when it came 9 or 10 o'clock, they were all in bed. I was down at the blackjack table. They were all in bed. The biggest group of squares I've ever been around in my life. So his assumption that these leftists are just a bunch of, you know, wankers watching X-rated material, you don't know that, dude. And I find that people who tend to think other people are that way are probably that way themselves. Because I could be a bit of a degen. So I was thinking all these libertarians were like these wild partiers, and it turned out maybe I was just projecting that I wanted to go out to Vegas and play blackjack and get way too drunk and party. And it wasn't the libertarians at all. It was a bit of projection. I'm not saying anything at all about Mike Johnson. I'm just going to let that hang out there. Matt, you're the one who seems a bit obsessed about it. And 23 Skidoo says, were these all paleos? No. One of the people out there, he's no longer in the party. I'm not going to mention any names, but if you guys heard me, this is one of the biggest like left libertarians. Like, no, the Nevada party at that time was very left libertarian, and they were well on their way to denying the non-aggression principle. Like it was, no, not at all. So it was just libertarians. Just because we advocate that these things should not be illegal, it isn't because we want to be doing them without getting thrown in jail. Libertarians as a whole, I know more teetotalers that are libertarians than just your average population. If I had to take a group of libertarians by percentage-wise, more of them would be dry and completely free of any kind of substances except for weed. Libertarians do like weed. I'll give that. And I don't, which is funny. But put aside weed, most libertarians that I know, they certainly don't frequent prostitutes, they don't do drugs, and a good percentage of them don't drink. All right. Did I stop him midway? I did. Let's continue.
You know, they view these people who try to live, who make any attempt at all, really, to live a virtuous life, they view them with a mixture of astonishment and hatred, and of course, resentment and envy.
I do think both sides view each other with hatred, but I don't think any of that hatred that was in those articles were mean. They were barbed to Speaker Johnson, but it wasn't because of the X-rated material. It's because they don't like him because he's a conservative Christian. And one of the things conservative Christians don't like is, is sexual debauchery. But that really wasn't the reason. It was the whole package. And it was just the way it was. But Matt was just as bad. When you're looking at things, you have to, in order to have credibility, admit when there might be a little bit of a point. Normal people, even if you don't agree, should be able to concede. I don't think it's strange, personally, that he had a 17-year-old son as his accountability partner. But I'm not quite so autistically tone deaf. I can see how other people might think that's a little... And if you can't concede that, this is probably a discussion you shouldn't even be in, because you can't relate to the average person. I have, as a hater said, but I loved this terminology, so I've co-opted it for myself. I have weapons-grade autism, baby, and even I can see. Even I have enough social awareness to go, yeah, I can see how the average non-evangelical would find that creepy. And I absolutely can see it from the evangelical point of view because, again, I was really steeped in those circles for a while. Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, before the fall of Pastor Bob Coy. Okay, you guys, well, what I thought was the most interesting thing here was the selective editing, but I like to point out where Matt can be right and where Matt can be wrong. Tomorrow, most likely, I don't know, unless another good video comes across my way. I found this old pamphlet. When I say old, let me quantify that. I think it's from the 90s. It doesn't have a date on it, but if I had to date it by the surrounding material, it's from the 90s, which was from the Society for Individual Liberty. And it's a position paper that used to put out these trifolds on the Middle East, which I thought would be really interesting to read today. Today meaning, not like in today's times. So perhaps tomorrow we shall do that. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get any clips out of this, but if so, they will be some YouTube shorts and also on the Talk of the Tick. So I hope you have an awesome night. Mi guapas de libertad.
living, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want to